imposter syndrome. Imposter syndrome comes in many shapes and forms. For me, I've experienced it in the sense that because I don't have a certain amount of subscribers or views, at times in my journey, I felt unworthy to call myself a YouTuber or podcaster.
Yeah.
Because in my head, a YouTuber or podcaster has to have at least X subscribers or X views, which is funny because there's no number. It's just whatever I make it out to be. And I've met people who have millions of views and millions of subscribers, and they still don't feel like they have the right to call themselves that. So imposter syndrome affects everyone. And I realized really quickly when I was in high school, I felt super insecure about the videos I made, and I would kind of try to hide them from other people. And then based on how I hid them, when people found out, they saw the way that I saw my own content and they would make fun of me for it. And then I studied abroad and I went to college and I had this newfound confidence. And even though my videos didn't get any better in quality or production, when I went to college, I was more of a confident person and I didn't feel like an imposter. I'd been posting videos for 2 years, so I'd introduce myself. I'm a YouTuber. I'm a podcaster. And people all the time would see the way that I saw my own work.
Yeah.
And they'd be like, I always wanted to be a YouTuber, but I never had the balls. Or they would like me because I was a YouTuber.
Totally.
Even without seeing my stuff because I owned it.
Yep.
Now, you're 18, and while I'm sure you've dabbled a bit with what I just described, what I really find interesting and I want to get into is the first time that you closed a big deal. We're going to do the first time you closed a big deal, and then I know you had big podcasts. You said at one time someone pulled up in a Lamborghini to your podcast.
Yeah.
How, in those moments, how do you feel worthy? Like I'm just imagining a 16-year-old you sitting in whatever makeshift podcast studio you made that day, and a guy pulls up in a Lambo, and you're like, "Yeah, I'm worthy to interview this guy." Or what did you feel in those moments?
I think the first podcast deal we ever closed is a great story to tell because it definitely embodies that feeling of imposter syndrome, whatever it is. And I'll get into how I think I deal with it. But first podcast deal that comes our way, company reaches out to us. And at this point, we had made basically no money because YouTube wasn't a big traffic source. We were big on the listening platforms. Company reaches out to us and they're like, great, we want to get some ad spots on the show. And so I called up one of my buddies who works in the creator economy and helps other people close deals. And I told him, he goes, all right, what's your numbers? What are you guys doing? I told him downloads. And he goes, this is what you should ask for. And it was $2,500 for a 30-second spot. And I said, dude, you're crazy. I was like, bro, I can't lose this deal. And so I can't ask for $2,500. I mean, think about it. I was 17-year-old kid, had never worked a job, had never made money from the internet. And this guy's telling me that I can talk about a brand for 30 seconds and get $2,500.
Yeah.
I'm like, you're crazy. He goes, listen to me. He goes, if you lose this deal because you asked for too much money, I will spot you the money. I'm like, are you sure? And he's like, dude, I know that nobody else in the space has your guys' type of listenership. This brand wants you, ask for $2,500. And he goes, and don't negotiate on the numbers. Say it's $2,500 or nothing. And I'm like, oh man. So
What a good friend.
hang up the phone. And I'd never met this, we've only ever been internet friends.
Yeah.
His confidence in me gave me just enough confidence to go and say those numbers.
Yeah.
Because he was willing to spot me, and we were trying to sell them on 2 spots. So it was going to be $5,000 for the month. Well, he was willing to put that up if I lost the deal because of his advice. And so get on the phone with the brand, and I'm shaking, bro. I'm like, I'm going to lose this. I'm going to lose it big time. But I'm like, no, because he's going to give me the money. If it's just about the money for me, then I'm going to get the money. That's going to be fine. He'll find a brand for us. Get on the phone. We're talking with them for a bit, and we're just beating around the bush. And I'm just waiting for somebody to ask me, and I'm going to say $2,500. And they ask, and they're like, all right, so how much are you guys looking for a 30-second spot? And in the moment where those words came out of my mouth, something flipped as I said it. I thought about what Tom had told me and that they're going to take it. And so I said $2,500 for a 30-second spot, and it went silent. And he told me, don't follow it up with anything. You say the numbers and you go quiet. Let the room sit. So I said $2,500 for a 30-second spot. And they go, and you want 2 ad spots for the month? And I'm like, yes. And I'm sitting there and like, it's done. Like, I'm gonna have to call Tom and it's over. And they kind of like talk to each other for a second, go on mute, come off mute. Sounds like a great deal. And in that moment, I realized that the worst case scenario in my head, where first of all, I was eliminated because Tom gave me another opportunity. But I stood there and told them $2,500 is what I charge, and they believed me. Now, it's a false sense of confidence because I don't necessarily believe it myself. But because I told them this is what I offer, I'm a YouTuber. This is who I am. People believe what you tell them. And so if you believe it to your core, eventually it becomes true.
And something I want to highlight with this story, and first of all, your friend is such a good friend.
Yeah.
He really helps you out there. But something I want to highlight with this story is the fact that you were giving them $2,500 or more worth of value. It's not like you were like, let's go into this phone call and screw this guy. Because I know your character, and we're going to get into how character plays into imposter syndrome in a second year. But you felt unworthy, as I would feel unworthy asking for that amount of money because you've never gotten it.
Right.
So it feels wrong. I'm a 16-year-old kid. I'm asking for $2,500. Previously, I've made $12 serving at a restaurant and per an hour. And now I'm saying for 30 seconds, I'm going to make $2,000. It feels wrong.
Right.
But at the time, your show hit their audience.
Right.
And it was going to probably did sell more than $2,500 where it got it. Yeah, I mean, I don't know because I can't go and verify that.
Yep.
But so it wasn't like you were screwing them.
Right.
But I want to point that out, and I find that very interesting. And I think you had mentioned to me in a conversation we had off camera that you just move from one league to the next league to the next league. Like asking for $2,500 feels wrong when you've never played in the league.
Right.
But we could go find various podcasts of some sorts, and the conversations are all the same, just with bigger numbers.
Yeah.
It's your job to know where that plays out. But anyways, I was interested to hear that you were 17 when this all happened. You're 18 now, so probably somewhere close to a year to 2 year gap between that and now. So you've gone from one $2,000 deal to your agency making six figures. So you've had this scenario play out over and over and over again. What have you learned from playing out that scenario?
Yeah, I mean, the funny part about being 17 is every single contract I signed at that point meant nothing, and nobody ever asked me about it. I would sign contracts at 17, and when you're a minor, it doesn't matter. They would never ask for my parents to sign it. And so every contract that I ever saw while doing the podcast had absolutely zero, there was nothing to it. Yeah, I mean, I think the interesting thing is getting comfortable in the negotiation situations. And as I've accomplished certain things in my life, I realize how fast they become normal. And that's something I never want to take for granted because these are things I've worked for. Buying a car, closing my first deal, moving out, New York Times, all these things were things I worked for. And then they became normal really, really fast. And I think there's a downside to that when it's an accomplishment. But I also think in these high stakes scenarios, when I go into a negotiating meeting, everyone there makes more money. Everyone there is more qualified. And I somehow am bringing value to them. The more I'm in that room, and I've learned to just put myself in that room, even when it's not comfortable, even when it's not the place I want to be, or I don't feel like I'm bringing value, I'm in that room for a reason. And that becomes normal really fast. And eventually I feel like I'm supposed to be there. And I think that's just that thing of repetition and actually doing the thing you're going to say. I mean, if there's any credit to what I've done or any reason why it's worked, is because every single thing I do, I say I'm going to do, I end up doing. Even in just the smallest things of just following through on your word goes so far in every single situation.
You said something good there, which reminds me of a famous Alex Hormozy quote. And he says, "You don't become confident by shouting affirmations in the mirror. You become confident by having an undeniable stack of evidence that you are who you say you are." I remember a few years ago, I read Think and Grow Rich. And there's literally an equation in Think and Grow Rich to think money into existence, or you could apply it to anything. Think your dream podcast into existence, whatever. And in that equation, it's something along the lines of, I will have X specific goal. I will have X specific goal by X specific time, and I will give up X specific thing 1, X specific thing 2, X specific thing 3 to have that goal. So you get really specific about what goal you're going to have by what date and what you're going to give up to get it. And I said this in my mirror, something along the lines of this exact phrase. I'm going to have 1 million subscribers by my 23rd birthday on March 30th. And I'm going to give up time with friends, time on my phone, and time at school.
Yeah.
And I did give up those things. I gave up time with my friend. I spent way less time on my phone. I dropped out of school. But I didn't get 1 million subscribers. And no matter how much I said it, it never came true.
Yeah.
And I realized, while I think there is some super minor benefit to affirmations, which is that the words you speak to yourself matter. Obviously, if you're constantly telling yourself you're depressed, you're going to begin to believe those things.
Yeah.
If you're constantly telling yourself you're happy, you're going to begin to believe that. But what's way more effective in making you believe something is not just saying a thought or a word aloud,
Yeah.
is having evidence that that thought is true.
Right.
And so when I first started my YouTube in high school, I didn't have evidence that I was a YouTuber. Yeah, I posted a couple of videos, but I hadn't put years into the game.
Yeah.
I hadn't studied the game. I hadn't done these things. And by the time I'm at where I'm at now, again, I don't have that many subscribers, but I've made over 100 vlogs, over 100 podcasts. I've studied, I've prepared, I've done these things, and I know that I'm a YouTuber.
Yeah.
I believe it because I've taken action to prove that.
Yeah.
And just like you've gone into meetings again and again and again, and you've closed deals, not only gone into meetings, but you've closed deals and you've made money. It doesn't matter that you're 18. You have an undeniable stack of evidence that you are a successful business owner. And I think like a really interesting flip side thought to this, it's controversial, but I'm against like mental health, anxiety, brain drugs, stuff like that, because like if someone thinks they're depressed and they have whatever reason for thinking they're depressed, and then they go to a therapist that the therapist is there to help them, but also every time they go to the therapist, it's a reminder that they are who they say they are.
Yeah.
And they have this pill next to their bedside, which might chemically help them with whatever they're dealing with, but it's also a reminder right next to your bedside that you are who you say you are, which are a depressed person. So I think these things play out everywhere. And even like when you drop out of school, it's not all sunshines and rainbows, but dropping out of school made me believe, dang, I'm taking a step that other people aren't taking. So I got to make this work.
Yeah.
And that is just, I find that to be a really, really interesting concept. But furthering on this track of imposter syndrome, talk about the importance of mutually beneficial deals. So like I said, I don't want anyone to hear this and think, let me just go spew out a random number in my business deal, or I'm capable of anything. The reason it makes sense is because you always see mutual benefit.
Yeah. 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 I read a book and I'm completely blanking on the name. I'll send you in. You can add it in the description. But he was a FBI hostage negotiator. And so he's negotiating for quite literally the most important thing that you could be negotiating for, and that's somebody's life. So whether it's a bank robbery and there's hostages inside, he's the one on the phone with the robber negotiating it. And now, what following what Ozzy just said of like mutual benefit, well, when there's a robber inside and they're at gunpoint, I don't know how much mutual benefit there's going to be, but there is a way for both people to win. There's a way for the cops to get inside, the hostages to get out, and who knows, I don't know how the robber wins in this scenario.
Yeah.
But listening to that book, it completely flipped my view on business and negotiation, because I mean, you watch Wolf of Wall Street and you're like, yeah, I'm just going to go rip them all off. I'm going to make a ton of money and everybody's going to be screwed, but I'm going to be rich. And not that I was ever going to go in with that, but when that's all you consume, and that's what negotiating is like, I'm just going to get as much money as I can and I'm just going to take the money. And what he says in that book is that a good negotiation leaves with both people winning, and you should be able to do business again. And he said, you will make more money that way. And I thought, well, that mean, when I'm listening to it, it sounds like it could be true. Let me test it out. And so it switched my business model, because at some point I was doing like, just the way I was doing my payments and stuff was different. And I switched it to like a monthly retainer fee. So it's X amount of money for the month, right? And I thought, well, if I do that, then every month it should be simple. It's just like a Netflix subscription. And if they're liking what they're getting every month, they'll have no issue paying me. If I feel comfortable with what I'm asking for, I'm delivering results, we're both winning. that has turned into, instead of just asking for, say, $2,000 in a month, well, if we do $2,000 for 12 months, then you have $24,000 instead of just $2,000. Or say I would have came in and I would ask for $5,000 for the month. I'm ripping them off and they probably won't be able to keep up with $5,000. Maybe they can do it for 2-3 months. But in the long term, if we can do business together over and over and over, and that, I think, for me, starts with coming into the negotiation with an honest heart. Not what do I feel comfortable asking for, because that's not always the best metric. Because again, go back to the podcast. I didn't feel comfortable asking for $2,500, but I had the product and the proof to back up that that's what I was qualified to ask for. And so I think if we were to listen to our heart and our gut more often of what do we deep down, if there's no other opinions, nobody else is affected, what do we truly believe we should ask for when we walk into those rooms? I think trusting your gut and what you honestly believe both people can win. You take out everything else other than just the two people in the room. And you have to go into it realizing that that person also wants to win in the room. And if they're going into it with the same heart as you, then you should win too. And if both people come in with that type of heart, and I think even if they don't come in with that heart posture, but I do, and they feel that, hey, I want us both to win. Let me hear you out. Where are you coming from in this situation? You automatically kind of drop these barriers, because I realize when I go into negotiation, I come up with some walls, they come up with some walls. Well, if we're just throwing stuff over the wall, it's not really going to work. So if I come in there, hey, what is best case scenario for you? And then they ask the same question back, and you find a middle ground and you both win. And clearly you can make a lot of money doing it. You're not shortballing anybody. And I think that also helps eliminate the imposter syndrome. Is like I come in and I tell them, hey, this is how long I've been doing this for. I come in, I tell them numbers. I don't tell them opinions or feelings about what I feel about what I do. I tell them what I have done. And that helps me eliminate the feelings of, am I qualified for this? Am I asking for too much? I take feelings out of it for me. I tell them, hey, this is what I've done. Do you like what I've done? Do you enjoy it? Like, do you think this product's going to work for you? And if they say yes, then that's great. I also got really comfortable turning down money. I mean, I've gone into meeting and turned down a $40,000 contract for a year. It for me, it didn't feel right. If I go in there and I don't feel like I can genuinely help you with what you need to do, the money's off the table for me. I'm no longer interested in it. And I got really comfortable with that. And it helped money not become my all-time driver in everything that I do. It also made me honest to my core. And so now I can go into these meetings, and when I take a deal, I feel really good about it. And I feel like I'm winning, they're winning, my heart's in the right place. And I think when my heart's in the right place, I ultimately do the best work for the client. And I feel good when I sleep at night. I got money in my bank account. I feel good about myself, and the client's happy. That's why I think I can sustain this, and why I've been able to build it in the way that I have.
Yeah, I want to zone in on that imposter syndrome aspect of that again, just to really give this value to the audience, because imposter syndrome is so prevalent. And I think we've both have a lot to say in it. Specifically you as someone who's made lots of money at a young age, which is generally a very key scenario that leads to imposter syndrome, and me as someone who's posted 300, 400, 500 videos and still hasn't reached a numeric success. Those are big scenarios that create imposter syndrome. But that thing of going into a meeting and asking for a lot of money, or taking the guest who's coming out of their Lamborghini and feeling worthy to interview them, the reason you might feel unworthy to interview that guest or take that big deal is because you see what they have and you feel unworthy of it, because you're thinking about your age or you're thinking about your studio. But that's something I keep in mind too. Not that I've interviewed a bunch of insanely numerically successful guests, but I have had sat down with some million subscriber influencers and some rich people, and I just remind myself, I don't have to have made boatloads of money. I don't have to have boatloads of subscribers, because I know there's things I can always offer.
100%.
The biggest hack of always offering something is literally God. Because I have a relationship with God, and that relationship with God permeates all aspects of my life. So I have this
100%.
joy, this peace beyond understanding, this satisfaction without money, without comfortability. I have all these emotional things that come as a benefit of following Jesus. And I know that at the very least, I can offer that to everyone I interact with.
Yeah.
And that emotional peace, joy, happiness, that's something that millionaires don't have, multi-million subscriber people don't have. So
100%.
I have that at the very least.
Yeah.
But then even if someone's listening to this and they're like, I'm not religious, I don't believe in Jesus, whatever. Anything emotional.
Mm.
Can you help that person have a good time?
Yeah.
Are they going to have a thought-provoking conversation? Maybe what you say in your podcast is going to make them think about their business. I know that I'm a valuable person to have a conversation with.
Yeah.
One day I'll have a lot of viewership to pair with that. I'll have money coming in to pair with that, but those are bonuses. I don't need that to add value. But in your case, you're selling a service.
Mm-hmm.
You're selling as a service, marketing. And again, the more you get these clients and you actually sell well for them and you do well, like you said, you have that genuine heart, you can begin to focus not on the fact that you're 18 years old, but the fact that you're actually going to benefit their business and their life and those clients. And I love the fact that you said, I will turn down money if it doesn't serve me. And that's something I'm trying to think about. Before this podcast, I told you that I'm 80 episodes in and I haven't done a Zoom interview podcast yet. And I don't know if that will change, but the reason I haven't done that up until this point is when I consume podcasts, I personally don't like watching Zoom podcasts. I don't like the muffled audio. I don't like the lack of connection between the screen.
Yeah.
So why would I go make a podcast, which to me is selling my product? Why would I go sell a product that I don't like to buy or consume? So
That's great.
Up until this point, I've refrained from it. So I don't know. I mean, these are all really, really good things. I'm glad we went super in depth on imposter syndrome because I think that's really valuable. But